welcome. I'm Asavri Jindal and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top stories of this hour. US President Donald Trump has suggested some TV networks should have their licenses taken away amid a row over ABC host Jimmy Kimmel. The Disney-owned network announced it was suspending Kimmel indefinitely following backlash over his comments about the murder of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. US President Donald Trump announced plans to finalize a deal on TikTok during an upcoming call with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The deal would have TikTok's US operations owned by American investors, including major tech companies. Trump also noted that the app has helped boost his popularity with younger voters, potentially aiding his 2024 campaign. The US Supreme Court will hear arguments on November 5th over the legality of Donald Trump's sweeping global tariffs. This comes after a lower appeals court ruled that Trump overstepped his authority by using emergency powers to impose tariffs. The case will test the limits of presidential authority in driving economic policy. The United States vetoed a crucial UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza as Israel intensified its offensive. This is the sixth time that the United States has vetoed a resolution on the truce at the UN since the beginning of the war on October 7th. The resolution, supported by 14 of the members out of 15 members, demanded an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, the release of hostages and increased humanitarian aid. The Israeli army urged the government on Thursday to halt the entry of humanitarian aid from Jordan to Gaza following a shooting attack at the border crossing. Israel's Lieutenant General recommended suspending aid until an investigation into the incident is completed and revised screening procedures to Jordanian drivers are implemented. The shooter, identified as a Jordanian truck driver, was transporting aid to Gaza when the attack occurred. Israel launched a new wave of airstrikes on Thursday targeting Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon, aiming to prevent the terror group from rebuilding in the area. The Israeli Defense Forces issued evacuation warnings for 4 sites, later expanding the order to 2 additional buildings. In fact, according to the IDF, the strikes were ordered in response to Hezbollah's attempts to resume its operations in the region. Thailand's King Maha Vajiralongkorn has officially endorsed Prime Minister Ontin Chernavikul's new cabinet, according to a notice in the Royal Gazette. The endorsement clears the way for the cabinet to take oath before the king, a necessary step before they can address Parliament. Following the oath, the ministers will be able to formally assume their duties. Canada and Mexico pledged to deepen their bilateral ties and strengthen their free trade pact with the United States. During Prime Minister Mark Carney's visit to Mexico, at the press conference, Carney and President Claudia Sheinbaum emphasized expanding economic and security cooperation as well as their shared commitment to their partnership with the U.S. And our top focus this hour, developments that are taking place in the United States. Well, Hollywood is now reacting to the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel's talk show. Jon Stewart has returned to The Daily Show early with a satirical take on what television might look like under President Trump's media control. The set turned gold and Stewart played a host too, afraid to speak freely. The segment was sharp, cynical and deliberately less funny than usual, making a point about censorship and double standards. Let's in fact listen in to The Daily Show.
All this swirling around, are the naysayers and the critics right? Is Donald Trump stifling free speech?
Of course not, John. Americans are free to express any opinion we want. To suggest otherwise is laughable. Ha ha ha! We are a nation of diverse perspectives, and we are not afraid to be different.
Ronnie, what's up with your tie? You're gonna get us in trouble.
No, but this is the only red tie I have. Okay, it's fine.
That's not red. It's pink.
It's not pink. It's at least it's salmon. All right, that's a shade of red.
It's not red enough. It's gotta be mugger red.
Can you calm down? God, is this your first dictator? Listen.
Meanwhile, Democrats in Congress are pushing back. They announced a bill to strengthen free speech protections, accusing the Trump administration of intimidating political critics. Joining us at this point in time is Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, joining us from New Delhi, India. So thank you so much for your time on NewsX World. And I'd like to understand from you what Donald Trump has done, putting an indefinite ban on the Jimmy Kimmel show. Do you believe there is merit to his argument or his decision, or is he merely attempting to intimidate and silence other talk show hosts and celebrities, or anyone, in fact, who has an opinion that opposes the view of the Trump administration?
Look, a talk show, essentially a humor show. And frankly, it lampoons a lot of politicians, whether Democrats or Republicans or unaffiliated. The talk shows lampoon them, and that is quite routine. So very frankly, lampooning anybody is fair game in a talk show. And if you try and ban it, well, the problem is that, matters are getting quite violent in the United States. The murder of Charlie Kirk was very unfortunate, and as was the attempted murder of Donald Trump when he was a candidate. Unfortunately, the culture of guns is very widespread in the United States, and now what's happening is arguments are being settled by the bullet, not by discussion. That's a very unwelcome development. But I'd like to say that banning a show, threatening to take an entire channel off the air is completely unacceptable. It is complete censorship, and I don't believe it is acceptable in any democratic country. This is becoming more and more as though that the model that's being followed is that of the People's Republic of China, where obviously any kind of show publicly aired, whether talk show, humor show, whatever, there are very clear limits to that. And the head of state and the head of government are immune from any mention or criticism. Mention only if there's a complimentary mention. Look, I don't think that's a very good thing for the United States. I don't think it's enforceable in the United States. And I certainly don't believe that the Supreme Court, which swears by the US Constitution, a majority of judges, all the judges swear by the US Constitution. And I don't believe the Supreme Court is going to say that this kind of a block or this kind of a threat of taking a channel off the air is permissible under the US law or indeed the US Constitution. So in my personal view, I think President Trump has gone too far. Lampoon, then lampoon back. Your supporters can lampoon back. But the point is that you can't block a lampoon, because if you do that, it gets a new life all its own. And frankly, people like us who have never witnessed a Kimmel show for years, we have suddenly, been witnessing this particular show for which he was removed off the air. So it has a negative purpose in the sense that it basically makes the show go viral on social media. And how do you check social media? You can't do that. Otherwise, tomorrow you'll start asking for curbs on that. The reality is a slippery slope. It's an unenforceable slope. And the only way is argument by argument. You fight argument by another argument. You fight a lampoon by lampooning in a different way. That's the only way to do it, not by using the law. to block, by using executive power, to block to threaten to block an entire channel. And so far Disney is concerned, frankly, it is a lot of people are very angry at Disney. And I think they're going to remember this in future. And the reality is also in the US Congress. I mean, if congressmen, the majority support this kind of thing, then I think they're making themselves vulnerable to voter anger, because the voter would like to see the cut and thrust of debate, or whatever it is. Only a fringe of voters is intolerant to that kind of cut and thrust, and the fringe cannot get any politician elected. The fringe, is the fringe, that's it, period. So I personally believe it's a mistake on the part of President Trump, and I think he needs to backtrack on that. I think he made that statement about Air Force One. I think he needs to backtrack on that at the earliest for his own good.
Right, absolutely. I request you to stay on with us. So we, in fact, have some more news coming our way. Well, supporters of the Jimmy Kimmel show have gathered outside Disney Studios in Burbank and El Capitan, protesting ABC's decision to suspend his late-night show. Fans of Jimmy Kimmel have criticized the decision and demanded his return. Listen in to what some of the protesters have to say.
He's one of the last true faces of TV, if you ask me, because, you know, who knows how long those shows will continue, especially after this. So to remove him with the snap of the finger illustrates the degrees that this administration is willing to go to silence the opposition.
Trump has been threatening Kimmel for years. He pressured to get Colbert off the air. He said Kimmel was next, so it's not a surprise, but it is like a gut punch. It is a...
The Writers Guild is determined. We stand in solidarity with not only our fellow writers, but with everybody. We make our living with our words, right? We know the value of words, and this is a chilling effect. The First Amendment says that you can speak up and speak out against the United States government, and that's what's most important. That was the First Amendment that they did. It is our sacred amendment.
I don't think he said anything that was inappropriate. He stated the facts, and he has been stating the facts for quite a long time, and he's being censured for nothing more than speaking out.
And that's not the country that, you know, my parents came here for. My parents immigrated from Nigeria. I was born and raised in this country. I love America, and one of the reasons I love it is because you can say and express anything you want, and to see such innocuous comments get so penalized this way is just really hard.
All right, we leave it there and shift our focus to some other news that we are tracking. Well, as Israel advances ground offensive on Gaza and West Bank, multiple reactions are coming from across the globe. Spanish President Pedro Sanchez and German Chancellor met in Madrid and has reacted on EU's proposal over suspension of trade concessions given to Israel. President Sanchez has stated that Spain support the suspension of trade concessions, while the German Chancellor remarked that the decision regarding that would be taken in cabinet next week. The Commission has been deliberating a proposal on suspending trade concessions and sanctioning Israel's ministers over the war in Gaza. Let's listen in to what Spanish and German leaders have to say.
En relación con la propuesta de la presidenta de la Comisión Europea, la posición del Gobierno de España es clara, estamos de acuerdo. Venimos, de hecho, desde hace ya más de un año solicitando a la Comisión Europea que suspendiera el acuerdo de asociación estratégica entre la Unión Europea e Israel por entender que se estaba violando uno de los artículos más importantes, que es el artículo de respetar el derecho internacional humanitario por parte del Gobierno de Israel.
Meanwhile, French president has also made a statement on Israeli advancements, stating that Israeli actions are political objectives that intends to kill the possibility of two-state solutions. Listen in to what President Macron has to say.
West Bank has nothing to deal with Hamas. And when people start saying our answer either to the recognition or to the situation will be to restart settlements in West Bank. This is the best evidence of the fact that this is a political project whose objective is not to dismantle Hamas, but to kill the possibility of a two states and to deny the right of Palestinian people to live in peace in the region.
All right, so those are the developments that we are tracking at this point in time. Remember, there has been a protraction in the war with regards to Israel and Gaza, and now of course we have global reactions coming at this point in time. Leaders from Spain and Germany making their comments. One, of course, saying that they support the proposal of a suspension of trade concessions with Israel. Germany saying that they will deliberate on what happens next. There is a cabinet meeting that is expected to take place very shortly, but for now, of course, developments taking place in the international arena, where now the Spanish and the German leaders have come out. They've made their statements. We, of course, also heard a statement that was made by the French President Emmanuel Macron on Israel and Gaza and the developments that are taking place. What's, of course, we will be joined by our guests very shortly to share their perspectives, but for now, that's the development that we are tracking very, very closely. Remember, many developments taking place with regards to the Israel and Gaza war, and now reactions coming in from the global arena on, of course, speaking about what is happening over there. Like I said, the Spanish President Pedro Sanchez and German Chancellor, they've met in Madrid. They've reacted on EU's proposal over suspension of trade concessions given to Israel. Spain has made it abundantly clear that they support the proposal of a suspension of trade concessions with Israel. Germany at this point in time taking their time to make a decision on the same. They've said that there is going to be a cabinet meeting that is going to take place, after which a decision is going to be made. So deliberations over there expected to take place in the coming week. Those are the developments that we are tracking as we speak. Remember, what's happened in the past week is that there have been, of course, multiple developments that have taken place. There has been, in fact, cut-off of supplies to northern part of Gaza as well. We are tracking those developments very, very closely. In the interim, we are in fact being joined by Menachem Klein, the Israeli political. All right, we will be getting that connection sorted momentarily, but for now we leave it there and shift our focus to some other news. Well, France's President Emmanuel Macron confirmed that major European nations will likely reinstate international sanctions on Iran by the end of September. Macron emphasized that Iran's efforts to avoid these sanctions had been not serious, as Tehran continued to breach the nuclear deal by amassing uranium stocks far beyond the agreed limits. Let's in fact listen in to what the French president has to say.
This news we had from the Iranians are not serious. France has always been a very demanding and clear and consistent player on the Iranian issue. And I think this is very important for your country and your people. We never underestimated the risk of the nuclear bomb in Iran, but as well on ballistic capacities and regional destabilization coming from Iran. As they are unclear and they don't provide any clear commitment on that, yes, this is a European position, and we've worked with our British and German colleagues. We will put the snapbacks, and it will be followed by all those. Obviously, we endorsed this decision.
The move follows a 30-day process initiated by France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, known as the E3. After Iran failed to meet terms of the 2015 nuclear agreement, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Well, the sanctions would reimpose UN restrictions on Iran's arms, ballistic missile programs, and asset freezes which were lifted under the nuclear deal. All right. We are, of course, tracking developments very, very closely on the Iran nuclear sanctions. In fact, to take this conversation forward, we are being joined by Menachem Klein, Israeli political scientist, joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us, speaking to us on NewsX World. I'd like to understand from you, what exactly do you make of the statements that have been made by the French President Emmanuel Macron?
I do think that what's the Israeli genocide in the Gaza Strip has an impact on Western Europe and especially the civil society. And the European civil society, Western, Central Europe, civil society put pressure on their politicians. In the political echelon, advance recognizing the state of Palestine. And this is the initiative led by President Macron and MBS, Mohammed ibn Salman, the Prince Crown of Saudi Arabia, as the leading force in the Arab world. Both of them wants to advance the recognition of many European countries, West European countries, in the state of Palestine. It's a symbolic act. It's a symbolic act. It cannot change anything on the ground unless there are sanctions taken by West European countries, but also by the EU as a collective, and the recognition states. Let me put it this way: each country that recognizes the state of Palestine will say clearly on which borders it recognizes the state of Palestine. Just saying recognition is not enough. So what we need is to state the borders and to take actions, either sanctions, either sending food and supply to Gaza and breaking, even by force, the Israeli blockade. All this can signal that Israel is not treated as exceptional. The exceptional status of Israel, the forgiveness in the international community for everything Israel does, for any violation of the post-Second World War international order, this cannot continue.
Right, absolutely. With that, I'd like to thank you for joining us on NewsX World, sharing your perspectives with us. We do that, and we shift our focus to some more news that we are tracking. Well, Canada and Mexico have pledged to deepen bilateral ties and strengthen their free trade pact with the United States during Prime Minister Mark Carney's visit to Mexico City. Carney and President Claudia Sheinbaum said that they would expand economic and security cooperation and remain committed to the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, which is up for review next year. Both leaders voiced optimism about making adjustments to boost competitiveness while also coordinating on border security and combating transnational criminal groups. Well, the trip, the first by a Canadian Prime Minister to Mexico in 8 years, comes as tensions with Washington and Trump's tariff threat highlight the need for a united front. Carney stressed the importance of growing trade and investment between Canada and Mexico over the next 3 decades. Listen in to what both the leaders have to say.
Soy optimista, no solamente por convicción, sino porque creo que el tratado comercial Canadá, Estados Unidos, México, México, Estados Unidos, Canadá, va a prevalecer.
And we are both committed to our shared partnership with the United States. And we look forward to using the upcoming review of TMEC, USMCA, CUSMA, different acronyms for the same thing, to find ways to make it fairer and more effective. Bilaterally, Canada and Mexico complement each other's strengths, and we stand united in times of challenge and crisis.
Professor Madhav Nalapur, the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, joins us from New Delhi, India. So thank you so much for your time on NewsX World. And I'd like to understand from you, the Trump Well, Trump has imposed 35% tariffs on Canada and 25% tariffs on Mexico at a time when these tariffs have been imposed. How important does boosting bilateral ties between Canada and Mexico become important?
Well, the fact of the matter is that neither Canada nor Mexico can supplement each other. Where the US market is concerned, is by far larger than either the Canadian or the Mexican markets. So this is a sign that many countries in the world are coming together in the face of the tariffs imposed by President Trump. In the case of Mexico and Canada, in my personal view, I think, and frankly, the entire structure of tariffs as envisioned by President Trump is a throwback to an earlier period of the 1980s. And the 1920s, I'd like to say. And that resulted in the Great Depression of the 1930s. So in my personal view, the entire, tariff tantrum that the United States is showing is completely against the interests of the United States itself. You can see that job growth is slowing down sharply in the United States. You can see that unemployment figures are rising in terms of number of people who want, unemployment benefit, and large number of unemployed do not even get the benefit, so they don't even ask for it. So I think overall, there's no doubt that the tariffs have harmed the US economy very, very substantially. And also I can understand tariffs on an adversary country, a country that is threatening you, or threatening your lifelines, threatening your primacy in global affairs. But that's not Canada, that's not Mexico, that's certainly not India. So using tariffs against both friend and foe defy any geopolitical logic. And I hope President Trump goes back to a reset of the real Donald Trump, the Trump that he was when he was talking in a very reasonable way about geopolitical policy and about situation. And tariffs are, President Trump seems to believe that tariffs are like the snake oil that was used in the American Midwest more than 100 years ago. And snake oil was sold by snake oil salesmen as a cure-all for any disease. And frankly, no disease was cured, except that the salesman made his exit. And when they were looking for a salesman to berate him for the lack of any effect on their own illnesses,
right, absolutely,
the salesman had gone somewhere else. So I think this tariff thing has to be stopped. And the sooner President Trump reverses himself on that, the better it will be for the United States, for its partners, and the worse for its adversary. The best gift that Donald Trump is giving China is to make the United States more and more look like China. So Xi Jinping can say, oh, we are not alone. We are there with the United States is also acting like us. It's also censoring, it's also punishing. And I personally believe that's a mistake on the part of President Trump. And I hope that very soon he understands that and he reverses course. Thank you.
Right, absolutely. With that, sir, I'd like to thank you for joining us on NewsX World, sharing your perspectives. We leave it there and shift our focus to some more news coming in. The US Supreme Court will hear arguments on November 5th regarding the legality of Donald Trump's global tariffs. The case challenges the president's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose tariffs, despite a federal appeals court ruling that Trump's actions overstep his authority. The tariffs, which have been a cornerstone of Trump's economic agenda, are currently set at an average rate of 16.3%. If the court rules against Trump, it could significantly reduce this rate and force the US to repay billions collected from the tariffs. Joining us at this point in time is Mr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, economist and finance expert, joining us from New Delhi, India. So thank you for your time on NewsX World, and I'd like to understand from you, how crucial does this hearing by the Supreme Court then become, considering the fact, and if we look at it from the India's perspective, 50% tariffs were imposed by Donald Trump. How crucial does this hearing then become?
As you rightly said, the basis for putting in the tariffs was on the 1977 IEEPA Act, which stands for International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which basically said that if there is any unusual and extraordinary circumstances, then the president can go ahead and put whatever tariffs they want to. And the reason that this US administration has invoked is that there has been a lot of fentanyl coming into US, and that is an emergency situation. And therefore, the government and the president is authorized to invoke its executive powers to put tariffs at whatever rate it wants against other countries. Now, clearly, there hasn't been any proof of any significant amount of, let's say, fentanyl coming from India or from Canada or from any other place. And therefore, it seems that fentanyl was used more as a fig leaf to invoke the IEA powers, and which is what the Supreme Court of US is also challenging. Now, if the Supreme Court goes ahead and strikes down the powers that has been invoked, then there are a couple of implications. One is obviously the economic implication, which means that the tariffs have to go immediately, and therefore trade can go back to what it used to be, and there will be refunds being given to those companies which have already paid the excess tariffs since they were invoked. The second implication is also political and more of domestic political, because it will damage the image of Trump administration, while also invoking the rage of what's typically called the MAGA base of the US. And that's something which will lead to more polarization within the US, but that's more from the political aspects. From an economic aspect, I'm sure there will be some counter steps being taken by the US administration if the Supreme Court strikes down this particular set of tariffs by the administration.
Right, absolutely. With that, I'd like to thank you for joining us on NewsX World, sharing your perspectives with us. Meanwhile, some more news coming in. During his UK visit, President Donald Trump addressed the additional sanctions on India, emphasizing his close relationship with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Trump clarified that while China is paying hefty tariffs, India's purchase of Russian oil is a sticking point. Let's listen in.
I'm very close to India. I'm very close to the Prime Minister of India. I spoke to him the other day, wished him a happy birthday. We have a very good relationship. He put out a beautiful statement, too. But I said, I sanctioned them. China is paying a very large tariff right now to the United States. But I'm willing to do other things, but not when the people that I'm fighting for are buying oil from Russia. If the oil price comes down, very simply, Russia will settle.
Despite these tensions, US-India trade talks were described as a positive on September 16, 2025, with both countries working towards an early trade agreement. US negotiator expressed optimism about the discussions. We leave it there and shift our focus to some more news coming in. The new cabinet of Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnavekul has in fact been endorsed by King Maha Vajiralongkorn, formally allowing ministers to take their oaths and assume duties. Anutin, the third Prime Minister in 2 years, appointed seasoned technocrats to key economic posts, including Ekniti as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Sufaji Sathumkam as Commerce Minister, and Otupol as Energy Minister. Veteran diplomat Sihasak becomes Foreign Minister, and in fact, Nathrofon takes over Defence. Anutin will also serve as Interior Minister. The new government aims to tackle high living costs, household debts and export pressures, while peacefully resolving the Thai-Cambodian border dispute. His move to name technocrats is seen as a boosting investor confidence despite his minority government and limited time for major policy changes. Well, this is all the time that we have for now. We will continue to bring you more updates from across the world. Stay tuned.